Hi, everybody, and happy Thursday. Welcome back to the Fab Money ladies. We hope you're enjoying our lives, and we think today is going to be one that you can really get your teeth into. So today I'm Kristen. In fact, every day I'm Kristen. I'm Kristen Rayner. I'm an active advisor and a managing partner with Acorn to Oak Financial here in Barrie. We're joined today by Brenda St. Amand from Mortgage Sense, a delightful mortgage broker. Jess Harcourt is here with us. She's an up-and-coming real estate agent. And Annette Bourassa, our resident CPA. Thank you, ladies, for being here. Today, we're going to talk about loans versus leases versus paying for cash. How do you buy a car? And all the different components that go into that decision. So since I love talking, I'm just going to keep going from my part. From a planning standpoint, from kind of that 10,000 foot view when I work with clients around this subject, one of the things that we talk about is some of the common attitudes that we have or some of the behavioral stuff that affects our choices. And when I say that, I mean, we need to take a look at the reality of your cash flow. Leasing will tend to be less expensive up front than purchasing a car potentially. So we need to look at the reality of the cash flow. We need to look at the allure of a 0% finance. And I always tease my clients to say, gosh, it looks good on the outside, but if we really think that Honda or GM or Subaru is just sitting on so much cash that they feel, altruistically, they should just let people acquire their product without any charge on their money, that's probably not happening. So sitting down and running through what would your option be to acquire the vehicle? What's the price per month and impact to you at a 0% finance versus what other sources you have that you might be able to acquire that vehicle? And is there a difference in the monthly payment? I assure you there is. One of the other things is paying cash. So my in-laws, bless their hearts, are very disciplined with their money, but they've never, ever, ever financed a vehicle. And they believe that that was really the best way to go. There's something in personal finance called lost opportunity cost. So anytime that you take a dollar and put it towards A, it can no longer be put towards B or C or D. And particularly if we're putting dollar A into an environment that we can't get it back out or we can't flow the dollar through A in order to do something else, then there's a cost associated with having eaten up that dollar in A, if that makes sense. So I think to wrap up my piece of perspective, I know that, we have to think about our own personal biases and our behavioral tendencies. I'm someone who loves to get into a new car every 3 or 4 years if I can. It does not make sense dollar-wise, but if I know going in that that's probably what I'm going to end up doing, I need to consider that in my bigger picture. We have to consider, I use the analogy of, money put into my home is really sexy if it's a new kitchen. I like putting that money in. And if it's a new roof or I need a new driveway paved, that's not very much fun money. And so how much is my attitude around sexy versus bland? How much is that affecting my decision-making process? Because your money decisions are never just about the numbers. We really need to zoom out. So I think there are many, many ways that we can acquire vehicles, and we can talk about depreciation when we get to the CPA. But at this point, I will pass it over to Brenda and see what she thinks from a financing standpoint. What are some of the things that we need to be considering?
Yeah, and just to build a little bit on what you had said about the opportunity cost, right? When you're going into a dealership and they're offering you 0% financing, whether it's via a lease or it's by doing their financing, that cost is built in somewhere. Right. So oftentimes when you go in to buy a vehicle, there's a negotiation that can happen. Right. And you can say, okay, well, I've researched and I think the car is worth this much. And you have that negotiating power, but you lose some of that power when you're now tied to their 0% financing or 1% loan. So that's one of those opportunity costs that I think you have to take into consideration. So from a financing point of view, I mean, the advantage of having, say you're buying your first vehicle and you've never owned or gotten a loan before, there is the benefit of building a credit rating. Right, where you want to have some kind of credit history, and a loan is one way to do that. But you need to take into consideration, what are your future plans going to look like? Are you going to need to borrow money in the next 3 to 5 years because you're looking at buying a house, or because you're going to need to borrow money to fix up your current house, right? Any payments that you have and that you're committed to are going to impact your ability to borrow going down the road. And I can tell you from a mortgage perspective that car loans are one of the biggest issues that we face when we're trying to qualify people for mortgages. So when we look at ratios, and I'm going to talk high level, I don't want to get into the nitty gritty of numbers, but we look at two different percentages. One is 39%, which is the maximum percentage of your income that you can use to put a roof over your head. And then 44% is the maximum percentage of your income that you can use for all of your payments. So if you're looking at getting the biggest house for your buck, and you're gonna go right to that 39%, that only leaves you 5% of your income that can go towards any other payments, right? You get into a fairly large car payment, and that can really skew the numbers. So I don't want to take up a huge amount of this time, but that's one of the biggest considerations that we look at from the mortgage point of view. Is you really need to think about, okay, it's not about what I want or what I need today, but how is that going to impact me in 2 years and 3 years and 5 years? So let's turn it over to Annette and get some of your feedback from a tax and accounting point of view.
Okay, so one of the things that I get often is phone calls of, should I buy or should I lease? First of all, the call starts with, I've got a quick question for you. And then I think, oh no. Okay, leasing and buying is never a quick question. You can pretty much put anything into a lease nowadays. You can even lease a website. Like, it's amazing. So you really have to be digging deep and look hard at these decisions. From a tax perspective, a lot of people think, I'm going to lease because then I have a write-off. What they don't realize is that you can write off an asset vehicle as well. So there's two different ways. You know, a lease, you write it off monthly and you claim the HST portion every month. Or if you pay $30,000 for that vehicle and you have it as a loan, you get to write off the interest portion of that loan as well as depreciate it. Okay, so depending on the interest rate, I have seen it go both ways, where you get the bigger write-off with the lease, or you can actually get a bigger write-off with the asset and depreciate with the interest. It depends on the interest rate. The other thing is, if you pay $30,000 for the vehicle, you can claim the HST right away. So if you're talking cash flow management, a lot of times that makes a big difference. I am incorporated, and when I went and purchased my last vehicle, I made sure my corporation bought the vehicle. I wanted my HST back. Doesn't that make sense, right? So those are things to think about. Aside from another thing we were talking about with behavioral stuff, something else that you need to think about that doesn't even impact numbers really is, what's your use of the vehicle? So if you are buying a truck, a dump truck or a construction truck, leases have a lot of stipulations when you return those vehicles, right? Whereas, and if you're putting a lot of mileage on the vehicle, so you've got to consider all of that. If you own it, you can drive it into the ground, right? You don't have to worry about, am I going to meet all the leasing obligations when I go to hand those keys over? Another thing I was thinking about is trade-in value. So if you own it, then at least you have some value at the end when you go to buy another vehicle. You've got some trade-in value depending on the condition. Mileage is always a limitation on the lease unless you're willing to pay more to add the kilometers. So sometimes, like, a real estate agent may say, I want to own it because I don't want to have to worry about putting the 60,000 kilometers a year on my car. So that's something to think about too. So as we're all bringing to light, it's not just one factor to think about when you want to buy or lease. You really need to sit down with your consultants and look at the different factors.
Yeah, that's awesome, Annette. I think I want to hear from Jess. And I know that she was coming on to be our guinea pig today. So I want to hear from you, Jessica, what's going on with you and your car? You were getting close, right, to making a car decision?
So I am, I very much need a new vehicle. As you mentioned, I am like days away, fingers crossed, I passed my last exam, which hopefully isn't a problem. But as of next week, I will be able to apply for my real estate license.
Nice.
So I am currently driving an '05 Toyota RAV.
Mhm.
Not exactly the sexy car most people envision a real estate agent driving, or a real estate salesperson. Sorry, I should get my terminology correct. So yeah, so obviously I need to replace the vehicle. And, it begs the question of, do I buy something cash? Do I buy something with a loan, or do I lease? Right. So the other factors in my life are I have 2 small children, a dog, I don't know what my kilometers will be because I'm just getting into it. So that's kind of like the high level view of what's going on with me. And I'd love to hear your thoughts of where I should go.
Well, I think from my perspective, one of the challenges people have is that we're trained in the financial services industry to think in vacuums, right? Or in single lane roads, so to speak. And what you want to start doing is zooming out a bit with your money choices and running the what if and the what then kind of questions to see, if I paid cash for this, what then? If I paid all my cash that I had stored aside for this and I need whatever, $3,000 for my child's braces all of a sudden, am I going to have to go to a credit card to acquire the funds for the braces or the emergency when I could have financed the car at 5%, which seemed really high, but in context of? So I think sometimes you have to think about, are we on, a 2-lane back road, or are we on an 8-lane highway? And we want to be thinking about our money decisions in the 8-lane highway kind of mentality, because it's not just getting into the vehicle. It's kind of like, Brenda, you must have this conversation with your clients, right? It's not just about getting into the house. It's about what happens then. What happens if you now have to buy snow tires, or you have to, your insurance cost changes because of the type of vehicle that you bought, or you didn't understand the impact of depreciation. I mean, one of the great things that's coming down the road, I hope, Jessica, is that the real estate industry is going to finally be allowed to incorporate, which will make a huge difference to how you run your business. And so I just think that, summing it all up from my perspective, we really have to balance the dollars with the behavior, with the risk tolerance, right? If I put myself into this position, I know one of the things that is occurring to me and my husband right now is, what does the next 4 years bring? So if I commit to a 4-year lease or a 5-year loan, what does the next few years bring as we come out of our particular environment? Maybe a year and a half from now, the auto industry will be taking such a hit that cars will be a third less than they are today. Nobody knows. Yeah. So that's my perspective from you. I think that it's really important that you honor yourself and how you sleep at night. So if you made a decision that my numbers might not show were the most efficient, but you're sleeping, which makes you a better mom, better with your career, you're healthier, you've got time to figure the rest of it out. I think we have to balance that. How do we sleep at night with how the numbers show themselves? Brenda, what do you think?
Well, I actually just wanted to pop in there because we do have a few comments on our live. So Felicia's saying, and this is a really good point, she's saying she feels like she's paid for a whole new car just in the repairs that she's put into her existing, and this was a conversation that we were having sort of behind the scenes before we came live, but that's sort of something that you have to take into consideration is, what are you going to do with the vehicle when the loan is done or when the lease is done? Yeah. Are you the kind of person that you're going to hand in your keys and say, thank you very much, what are you going to give me now? Or are you going to hold on to that vehicle, revel in the fact that you don't have a payment for a few years? And at what point is the cost efficiency there, right? And in our family, we've owned vehicles for 10, 12 years. And we've always sort of used the gauge that when we've gotten to the point where we're putting as much, if not more money into repairs and maintenance on the vehicle than we would have for a loan payment on the vehicle, then you've got the peace of mind with the new vehicle knowing, okay, if I'm going to leave here and I'm going to go to the cottage, my car's not going to break down in the middle of Highway 117 on the way, right? Yeah. So repairs is a huge thing that you have to take into consideration.
I think the danger with that is the people who say a $1,500 repair, I could be in a new car for $500 a month. Well, that you're only telling yourself 3 months of a story. So, catch yourself and how your emotions are driving your behavior. And, have somebody who has the tools to kind of pull out and say, here are the 3 lanes of the 8-lane highway you could be on. Which one do you feel the safest in, right? Which one's the most effective route for you? But yeah, the repairs are a huge part of it.
Yeah.
I'm going to throw in something else here is being that I came off a mat leave, took a package from my employer, and now I've gone through my real estate program. One of the things that came to mind when I was considering my options are, is anyone going to give me a lease or a loan? Because I'm a single mom with those scenarios, right? Yeah. So, cash purchase came to mind.
Yeah. I think that's the point. There's no right or wrong answer. There's no shame in whichever way you do it. It's just realizing where we can where our behavior can be driven by something beyond the immediate, or driven by the long-term picture without considering the immediate, right? Oh, in 5 years, my car will still be worth $50,000. Okay, but you don't have $2,000 a month right now to pay for it. So, it's just balancing things out.
Well, and from a financing perspective, the way that a car dealership looks at a financing application is very different from the way a bank would look at a financing application, right? Like, you go into a car dealership, they'll ask you to fill in an application, and you say, okay, this is what I do for a living. This is how much I make. They plug in the numbers, and if it works, they approve you. Now, I mean, this is not to say that you shouldn't be honest and completely upfront with your application, but when you're going into a bank and you're applying, or you're, doing something with financial institution, okay, well, can I see your pay stubs, please? Can I get a letter from your employer? So from a qualification point of view, sometimes it's a little easier to get financing from a dealership. Either way you look at it, though, I mean, your credit rating is going to impact it no matter what. But, from your point, Jessica, as far as what I qualify, being able to qualify really depends on what route you're taking as far as the application is concerned.
Yeah.
Sure. Can I add a comment to that, Brenda?
Yeah.
You made a comment about qualifying. It was interesting because my corporation is what purchased my vehicle for me. Mm-hmm. And when I was qualifying for a personal mortgage, they took the car payment into consideration, even though it was the corporation that owns my car. So even though you've got a separate corporate entity, it still came into play in the calculation. I found that interesting.
It is interesting. And, some people don't look at the disproportion that is in our vehicles, right? So your $40,000 vehicle might cost you $600 a month, but your $400,000 mortgage might cost you $1,800 a month or $2,000 a month. And the proportion is wonky. Next week, we're going to talk about good debt, bad debt. So I don't want to give away the cat here or anything, but Brenda, I know that you would have strategies, right? Where we could use good debt in order to acquire other things that our life needs, with a way to put the mechanism in to make sure that if we used, I'm just going to say it, if we used home equity to secure a vehicle in order to save on the interest and improve the cash flow, you have ways in your products, right, where you can structure that to make sure that the discipline is implied in paying off that depreciating asset that is the car. Yeah.
And we are hitting the 20-minute mark, and I think that's I know, right? I think that's an excellent point to carry forward to our good debt, bad debt. Yes, when you have equity in your home, there are products out there where you can have you can have 3 or 4 different loans under your mortgage. You can have a couple of lines of credit, and you can use them for different things. And there's absolutely a strategy that you can put in place to make that leveraging work very well for you. The only caution that I would give on that is, the reason that your mortgage payment is disproportionate to a car loan payment is your car loan payment is usually over 4 years, right? Your mortgage is more like 25 or 30. Yeah. You don't want to pay a car out over 25 years. You're not going to own that vehicle probably past 10 years, right? So, those are the kinds of considerations that you absolutely have to take into consideration.
So we will definitely pick up on that thread for next week for the live. Keep the conversation going. We are going to wrap it up. I had no idea we were at 20 minutes, but
we have a couple more comments and questions.
Oh, yeah.
So Alice is asking, when purchasing or leasing a vehicle, can I find out in advance how much the insurance would be?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I would say absolutely, as long as you know what type of vehicle, so the year, make, and model. Call your insurance company and say, I'm thinking of buying this vehicle. What does that look like from an insurance perspective?
Some insurance portals, like some people can even go online and just say, price me a change, edit a change to my policy. You can do that with like the personal and stuff, but absolutely smart move.
Yeah. Yep. And Felicia's saying, what about just purchasing a used vehicle and running it to the ground? That is absolutely an option. I think it comes back to behavior and comfort level, right? If you're comfortable in a vehicle that's going to potentially cause you problems, potentially break down on you, I think in Jessica's situation, she's got 2 little kids.
Yeah.
Right? The idea of breaking down at the side of the highway with 2 small children in the car is very different than if you're out on your own and you happen to break down in town, because that's where you do the majority of your driving.
Yeah.
Those kinds of considerations absolutely have to be taken into consideration.
I think there are a couple of really great resources if you want to look at a used vehicle. You certainly don't have to eat that 30 or 35% depreciation when you pull off the lot in a brand new vehicle, but you could look at Money Sense has a lemon guide, and Consumer Reports does a really good solid review of vehicles throughout the years and what are, what's the next best SUV from 2015 to 2020 kind of thing. So doing your homework with that, taking a look at Auto Trader and seeing how well does a Honda hold its residual value 6 years in versus, I don't know, a Suzuki or whatever. Just taking the time to do a bit of research.
Excellent point. Jessica, did you have any other questions you wanted to put out there to the panel to help you in your decision making?
Yeah, so given the scenario I've given you, what do you think, Annette, would be my biggest write-off of lease versus loan?
Well, so what I need to know in order to calculate those numbers would be, I need to know the purchase price for purchasing and what the interest is, the interest rate on it, and the monthly payment, as well as the length of the term.
Right.
And then comparatively, I'd need to know what your monthly lease payment is going to be and for how long. And then with that information, I'd be able to crunch the numbers and be able to tell you, because like I said, I've seen it go both ways. I've seen leasing be a better write-off. I've also seen own and depreciate and write off the interest as being a bigger overall write-off. So there's no blanket answer on that.
Okay.
The interest rates play a big role.
I think a good point, if you're looking at potentially buying a new vehicle, give your insurance company a call, give your accountant a call if you're self-employed, and do that research ahead of time before you make your decision.
Great.
Yeah, good place to wrap up. Thanks, ladies.
Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks.
Join us. Yeah, when are we back on, Brenda? Next Tuesday. It's Thursday already. Next Tuesday.
Yeah. So again, if you've still got questions or comments, we're all keeping an eye on them. So, throw them on the live and we'll get back to you with whichever person is most appropriate to answer you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Have a great day.
Thanks. Bye.